Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Myself, Suman Chakraborty from India, and today we are going to start our program. And now I would like to share this platform to our moderators today's program, Dr. Suchishmita Senchuduri. Dr. Suchishmita Senchuduri, you can start.
Thank you, Dr. Shuman Chakraborty. So let us start our program today. Good afternoon to everyone and welcome to our 8th lecture of International Lecture Series, which is about historical development of anthropology in Asia. I welcome you all in this online platform, especially professors and our colleagues from different universities from India and abroad. We are very happy that Professor Nguyen Van Su from Vietnam has accepted our invitation, and he is delivering today's lecture on the historical development of anthropology in Vietnam. Before listening to his lecture, I would like to request Dr. Shuman Chakraborty, Head of the Department of Anthropology, Mrinalini Datta Mahavidyapith, to address the audience first.
Okay. So, good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Suchishmita, for giving me the opportunity for welcoming to our delegates today. And I'm extremely happy and delighted to welcome Professor Nguyen Van Su from Vietnam National University for today's talk. He agreed to give the talk in our collaborative effort of the lecture series, that is International Lecture Series on Historical Development of Anthropology as a Discipline in Asia. The major aim of our lecture series is to bring the anthropologists from Asian countries in a particular platform where they can exchange their views and ideas, and also they can disseminate the great historical traditions of anthropology in that particular country. So besides Professor Su, I also welcome today our distinguishing guest, Professor Yunita from Indonesia, Indonesian University, and Professor Zong from South Korea, Seoul National University. And we also delighted to welcome our another Indian anthropologist, that is Professor Premananda Bharati. He is also my PhD supervisor, and I welcome all the delegates and also the Facebook page, and the friends from my Facebook page for the successful operation of the 8th lecture. So we have started our lecture series in 11th August 2021, and today is 4th October 2021, in which we have done 7 lectures, and today is the 4th lecture, and that will be given by the Professor Su. And I hope that all the audience will enjoy a lot regarding the Professor Su lectures. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Chakraborty, for delivering such a wonderful welcome address. And now, may I have the opportunity to introduce Professor Nguyen Van Su, if I am not pronouncing wrongly, sir. If it is perfect. Wrong, please forgive me. So we are very happy to have you here. Professor Van Su is the head of the Department of Anthropology, College of Social Science and Humanities of Vietnam National University, Hanoi. He did his PhD in 2004 at the Australian National University. Besides being associated with VNU, he has been associated with other colleges and universities in his country and abroad also, like in USA and Germany. He has delivered several lectures on various anthropological issues for undergraduate and postgraduate students. His research interests include development anthropology, political anthropology, land and livelihood issues, etc. He has a number of publications. One of his books, which is dealt regarding the issues of land tenure system of Vietnam, and another book is on industrialization and urbanization and livelihood changes in Hanoi. peri-urban villages. He has 3 edited books who has been co-authored or authored by him, and these are regarding historical research and teaching anthropology, which is our topic today also. So besides these books, he has a number of publications, research articles in several important, interesting journals. So we are eagerly waiting to hear you, sir. Welcome. This platform is over to you too, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
आपका आवाज सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है.
Am I audible to all?
Yes, yes, you are audible. You are audible.
Okay.
So,
It's audible.
yes. Now the process to.
Okay.
Sir, you may start.
No, that's fine. Thank you all very much for attending my talk this afternoon. And further on, I would like to thank Professor Suman for inviting me to talk about anthropology in Vietnam.
Please mute everyone. Please mute everyone.
I hope that the meeting today is like a starting point for all of us. We might go further for collaboration and research among departments in Asia for the development of anthropology in Asian universities. So my talk today is just an outline. Yeah, just wait a little bit. I show you my screen. Do you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, the first time I use Google Meet, so I'm not sure it worked well or not. So let me know if something wrong. Yep.
Excuse
So
me,
you
could
see
you
the-
please? Oh yeah, full screen already, yeah? Full screen, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you look it well.
It's yes, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes. I would like to give an outline of the development of anthropology as a discipline in Vietnam. So here you see the name, and I would like to divide anthropology development in Vietnam into 3 major periods, and I got the ideas of this one from a book that I told you that I and 3 senior colleagues of mine in Hanoi. So we organized a conference and discussing about 3 domains of the development of anthropology in Vietnam: history, research, and training. And throughout the periods of over 100 years, with 3 different periods of time. And here is a book in Vietnamese, and we made a book launch in a French cultural center to talk about the book. So then, based on that, I share with you about the development of anthropology in Vietnam within 3 different periods of time throughout 20 centuries until today. The first one we call ethnology in the first period of the first half of 20th century. It was strongly influenced by French ethnology. And then the second period of time in the second half of 20th century, influenced strongly by former Soviet Union's ethnology. And since the last over 20 years, we call anthropology, influenced strongly by social and cultural anthropology. So this three period of times, we see two names, but actually in Vietnamese, they also similar like this, but the nature of ethnology in this period of time and this period of time is a little bit different. And now we call anthropology. So I look at this development in over 100 years in to make anthropology in Vietnam as a discipline. For the first half of 20th century, so ethnology rooted in the colonial administration. There was no training in no departments of ethnology, no teaching, many research done by a number of French ethnologists who came to Vietnam to work for the government, and also a number of Vietnamese ethnologists who got training in anthropology, in ethnology, like a kind of self-training in ethnology in Vietnam at that time. And a couple of people who got training in France during that time. And those people, they did ethnography to collect ethnographic information, and they produce a number of good ethnographies on different topics, especially like livelihood, social institutions, kinship, and especially about cultural and traditional belief of a number of groups, local groups in Vietnam, in the center, in the Red River Delta of Vietnam, and also in the highlands of Vietnam. And this kind of research and publication and some other things created preliminary institution for the field of ethnology. And a number of ethnographies written in French, either by Vietnamese and French, has then been translated into Vietnamese today. So they are quite well read by Vietnamese ethnologists throughout many years. And one of them, and actually the first Vietnamese person who got training in PhD in ethnology in France was Nguyễn Văn Huyên. So Nguyễn Văn Huyên, he studied laws and ethnology in France and got a PhD in ethnology in 1935. And then he came back to work for a research institute of the French government in Hanoi, and then he moved to work, and after 1945 he worked for Ho Chi Minh and became Minister of Education of the government for a long period of time. 28 years, from 1946 until 1978, when he died. So he is the first Vietnamese ethnologist who received a PhD and also he did, I think, good research. And T, so Professor, I don't remember the name, but you mentioned T in 2003 in my department. So T was his nephew, and then I think now they have a group of people in his family work as anthropologists in Vietnam. So for the first half of 20th century, ethnology already existed and practiced among a small number of ethnologists in Vietnam, but it didn't came out to be a discipline yet, and we see a disciplinary development in the second half of 20th century. And here we see as a subtitle this section, you see I emphasize on the interaction between politics and academics, and then also in a few years ago I organized a conference to discuss about how ethnology in Vietnam in the second half of 20th century was influenced by Soviet model of ethnology. And here is the picture of the conference that well participated by those ethnologists who interested in this topic. And a couple of years later, and later, it was organized in 2017, and this one is 2019. So it's the book I edited on the influence of Soviet school on Vietnamese anthropology. So I think for the making of Vietnamese ethnology in the second half of 20th century as a discipline, it's very important to emphasize the intellectual mobility as a key driver for the disciplinary making. So you might know well that after 1954, Vietnam was divided as two parts, North and South, and in the South, ethnology was not very strong. We see only a number of ethnologists influenced by French tradition, and a couple of people influenced by American tradition of anthropology. They were teaching at the University of in Saigon. So ethnology was not very well developed in the south of Vietnam during the second half of 20th century, exactly between 1954 and 1975. But it's quite different in the North. So in the North, ethnology developed very strongly under critical influence by Soviet ethnology, this model of ethnology. So in 1961, I see, we see, one professor from Soviet Union, he is Pushkin, ethnologist. He came to my former university in 1960, and he assisted to build up the curriculum in ethnology, and so also he lectured on what is ethnology. So I have examined his lecture, and I see that exactly a kind of textbook to ethnology. So we see at very early years after 1954, so Soviet Union ethnologists came to Vietnam to North of Vietnam to assist the building of ethnology in the University of Hanoi. On the other side, for over 30 years, from 1955 until 1991, there was about 37 Vietnamese students came to study ethnology in Soviet Union and other countries within the Eastern Soviet bloc. And those people, they got PhD or maybe half a PhD. We call PhD in ethnology. And they came back to work in universities and research institutes, and they play very important role in the building of ethnology as a discipline in the north of Vietnam for this period of time. And those key figures, you might see, yes, Professor Van Huzat, and those people also professors of ethnology. So they came and they worked for these 4 people. They work in Hanoi, in my university and research institutes. And this professor who work in Ho Chi Minh City, and some of other people who work in the center of Vietnam. So they came back, they studied ethnology in Soviet Union and in Soviet Union ways of ethnology, and they came back and they contributed to the making of ethnology in the north of Vietnam, and then throughout Vietnam after 1975. And also for this period of time, we see Russian texts and ethnographies was quite well used by Vietnamese scholars, especially by ethnologists and also students of ethnology in university in the north and throughout the country. And some of them has been translated into Vietnamese for research and for teaching. Some of them was translated from Russian into Chinese, and then from Chinese into Vietnamese. So they go around. They went around, and also a number of joint research and exchange programs between and among former Soviet Union's ethnologists and Vietnamese ethnologists between the periods in the 60s, 1960s, 1970s, and especially in the early 1980s. And until 1987, it stopped there because it was about to be collapsed. The former Soviet Union was about to be collapsed. So this one is also important means to diffuse former Soviet Union ethnology into Vietnam. So with this kind of exchange, I think it's very important to see they contributed to the making of ethnology in Vietnam. And you see here those people they study in former Soviet Union, and these guys, and these guys, and they came back, and then they written 4 textbooks on ethnology. The first one was by these guys. His lecture in 1960 was translated into Vietnamese and published as a kind of textbook. This one, What is Ethnology? And then those three people, this professor and this man, later they produced three other textbooks introducing ethnology in the forms of former Soviet Union ethnology or tradition of ethnology. So those things, I think, play a very important role in the making of ethnology in Vietnam during the second half of century. On the one hand, it defines very clearly what is ethnology and how to do research in ethnology. And the ethnographies should look like a description of everything of ethnic groups in Vietnam. And the purpose of research is not just pure research, but for policy making is very important. And within this exchange, intellectual mobility, the institutional development was also at the same time proceeded. In Vietnam, we have two systems. One is education, that is universities, and the other one is research institutes. So those two, they all belong to as part of the government, but the university, they focus more on education, and research institutes focus under the National Center for Social Sciences and Humanities. They focus more on research and policy contribution. So in terms of institutional development for ethnology, we see first that was the foundation of my department today. So in 1961, Professor Pusikin, he came to my University of Hanoi, and he taught what is ethnology. And then he assisted to build a curriculum, and from that, the university also formed a team of ethnology in 1960. And 7 years later, this team became the foundation for the Department of Ethnology in 1967. But as part of the Faculty of History, that is what we call, but actually for you is Department of History. Department of History. So in 1967, ethnology was a section of Department of History at University of Hanoi. But in research institutes in 1968, the Institute of Ethnology was formulated and exists from there until today. And now it is under the Academy of Social Sciences. Before, the name was the National Center for Social Sciences and Humanity. And within the education system, after 1975, there were new department of ethnology in Ho Chi Minh, the University Ho Chi Minh, in University in Ho Chi Minh cities, and also in Hue. So actually, the number of department of ethnology in Vietnam for this period of time was not so many. I think that's two big one in two university in Hanoi and in Ho Chi Minh City, and somewhere else in other universities there was that's like a group of ethnologists. They taught ethnology, and they did research in ethnology. So there was no department of ethnology as a single one in other, besides those two universities in Hanoi and in Ho Chi Minh City. And for the whole country, the Vietnamese Association of Ethnology was set up in 1971, and the Journal of Ethnology was formed in this year. Maybe I need to check the year, but around this time, as part of the Institutes of Ethnology. So you can imagine the institutions of ethnology in Vietnam. So we have one department in University of Hanoi. We have one department in Ho Chi Minh University of Ho Chi Minh, in the University of Ho Chi Minh City. That is two major departments of ethnology. And the main research institutes, that is the Institute of Ethnology. And this is the biggest one because it's focused on research, but for contribution to policy making and other things ordered by the government. So the number of staff there was quite like a big one. Sometimes more than 50 staff work in these institutes. But for us, my department, like before we had like 7 persons, and for Ho Chi Minh City as well, they had 7 around that number of faculties teaching ethnology. And I think one of the major work the ethnologists in north of Vietnam and engaged with for the government was ethnic classification. So after 1954, Vietnamese authority wanted to classify the population in the country into different ethnic groups. And they did that first in the north and then in the south after 1975. And the Vietnamese ethnologists, they use ethnic criteria, classification criteria with those 3. One is common language. And the second criteria is similar characteristics of culture. It's both material and non-material culture. And the third one is self-recognition of ethnic group. So if someone says that I belong to the King people, then that will be one of the 3 criteria for classifying that person into the group of King people. So you look at this, and actually I want to compare a little bit between 4 countries, Vietnam, China, and former Soviet Union. The Vietnamese ethnologists, they use this model from former Soviet Union, and Chinese ethnologists also use this one from former Soviet Union, and some of them they came from Soviet Union straight to Vietnam, but some of them they also read literature in Chinese, but the Chinese one was influenced by the Soviet Union, and we see different kind of criteria those countries have used. But Vietnamese ethnologists by that period of time, they used these 3, and we see two of them are similar to those done by ethnologists in Soviet Union, and one similar to that one in China. And then we also see the influence from Vietnam to Laos, because Laos classifies ethnic groups later than Vietnam, but not exactly the same. So I see here is it is very important part of the work Vietnamese ethnologists has involved, but they have a look and borrow a number of criteria from Soviet Union, and some of them came in not directly from Soviet Union to Vietnam, but also go through China to Vietnam. And in 1979, the result of ethnic classification was published with 50 ethnic groups. So this the number today. So we have the majority, that is the King people, with more than 85% of the population of the country, with more than 78 million people, and 50 minor ethnic minorities with many names. We have a table, but I don't show you here. The number population accounted for over 16%, and the population is more than 13 million people, and they live throughout the country, but mostly in the mountainous area and some part of the lowland areas in the south. And that is the classification of ethnic groups. That was, I think, important part. And once they have identified the ethnic groups and classified the population into 54, and the government recognized that, and then it became like the circle, the trap that enable the Vietnamese ethnologists on the one hand to call the name of the ethnic groups, but on the other hand it's a little bit difficult for them to run out of this list and names of the ethnic groups. So we look at research side, we can see that for this period of time, research focused mainly on Vietnam, where there was some work on Laos, on China, on Cambodia, and but very small number. Most Vietnamese ethnologists work on Vietnam, and they use ethnography as a main research methodology to examine individual ethnic groups, and on the one hand, and the community of ethnic groups in Vietnam on the other hand. And research dimensions focus strongly on history, economy, society, and culture of ethnic groups throughout Vietnam. Of course, they couldn't cover all, but for it is something like a common dimensions. If you look at like one ethnography of one ethnic group, for example, they often talk about the name, the history, and the location of residence, and livelihood, and social organizations and relations, and cultural practices. So in that way, for this second half of 20th century. And this is one volume, is 5 copies, five volumes ethnic groups in Vietnam. So in 1979, 1978 and 1979. Vietnamese ethnologist published 2 volumes, one on ethnic minorities in the north and another one with the same name in the south. And the past few years, the institutes of ethnology, they put them together and they revise and update to make one book on ethnic groups in Vietnam. And you see, look like this one. And besides this one, there are hundreds of books and articles on issues, on different issues of ethnic groups. But we see, if we examine the ethnic description of the ethnic groups, we see they got in mind very clear evolutionary framework, because they wanted to study different ethnic groups because they thought that they were at different levels of development. So they study them to identify the characteristics of culture and other things in order to contribute to the policy making, in order to promote the development of the ethnic minority people, in order to improve their life for a more balanced development among different ethnic groups in Vietnam. So the king here is like a more at the higher level state of development, and the Muang and the king. So the purpose is, one of the purposes research was to move them up, so they will be equal among each other. So in that way, we see like a strong link of ethnological research to state ethnic policy, especially applied research contributed to state policies on resettlements of shifting communities, and also engage with cultural characteristic conservation, and contributes to state ethnic policy making and implementation. This was good, and it was also the foundation for ethnology, one of the foundation for ethnology to develop, to advance to be a discipline in Vietnam, but also because it engaged too much with state policy. Therefore, there were, I think, academic weaknesses after a few decades of development of ethnology as a discipline, because we see research, ethnological research focused too much on ethnography, and there was some, I think, reason for this one, but I think the more visible one is because the too much engagement with state policy. And this one is very important, lack of theoretical innovation, because by that period of time, most ethnologists, they was limited in the discussion of their research findings within the framework of Marxism and Leninism. And also the engagement with international communities of anthropology in the West and in neighbor countries was not very strong. So those things created, I think, contributed to the academic weaknesses of ethnology in Vietnam during the second half of 20th century. But you see, in 1986, Vietnam started to reform in order to move away from the centralized economy, and also in order to integrate with the world. And this became like one of the very, very important foundations for disciplinary turn to anthropology in Vietnam since the late 1980s, especially from the early 2000s. And in this period of transformation, I also emphasize the intellectual mobility contributed to disciplinary making. There is a new generations of Vietnamese anthropologists trained in anthropology in Western universities, like in the UK, in Canada, in USA, in the Netherlands, in Australia. So quite a good number of Vietnamese got a PhD there, and they also came back to work in university and research institutes in Vietnam. And those people, they like brought in something new and important to making ethnology moving from the former Soviet Union model to what we call today is like social and cultural anthropology. And also after 1986, especially like after 1990s, we see more and more international anthropologists coming to Vietnam for research and sometimes for work and for teaching. Most of them come to Vietnam for research, but some also contributed to teaching as well. And the textbook from in English from different anthropological centers, like in North America, in the UK and other countries, in Australia as well. So I think quite a good number of textbooks and ethnographies and other references that tell us about anthropology has been translated as well into Vietnamese. So this source of materials became a key part to define what is anthropology, what is social anthropology, what is cultural anthropology, and provides, I think, the foundation for the teaching and the development of the discipline in the past over 20 years. And also at the same time, especially after 1991, when former Soviet Union collapsed, there has been almost no collaboration and connection between Vietnamese ethnologists and former Soviet Union or Russian ethnologists. So the link between Russian ethnologists and Vietnam ethnologists almost ended after 1991. One more important, I think, factor that was the role of the Ford Foundation. So the Ford Foundation moved its office from Bangkok to Hanoi in 1995. And the Ford Foundation in Hanoi, offices in Hanoi, they offer like a good number of grants to support institutional development, to renovate ethnology into anthropology. For example, they assisted to enhance English capacity quite a good number of young Vietnamese students and junior researchers in ethnology So those people, they could be able to go out of Vietnam for master or PhD studies in anthropology, but also they could be able to read anthropological literature in English for the period before recently, because recently the English among Vietnamese getting better, but for like the first years of đổi mới period in Vietnam, so not so many Vietnamese students and researchers, including faculty members, could speak English very well. So the Ford Foundation contributed a good part into offer them to improve the capacity, English capacity, and provide the scholarship, and also assisted the curriculum building to transfer from ethnology, curriculum in ethnology before into anthropology and today, and also assisted to organize a quite good number of workshops, conferences, and other exchange programs to support the innovation of anthropology, of ethnology into anthropology. You could imagine that it was so difficult for like the periods like the late 1990s and early 2000s when this transformation started, and because not so many ethnologists in Vietnam by that time could understand well what is anthropology, and especially they fears how the future of the discipline would be if moving away from the tradition that they have built like for several decades. And therefore we see like a quite fast institutional change in the two national universities in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, because in 1975 the government set up two national universities, one in Hanoi, that is my university, and another one in Ho Chi Minh. And in these two national universities, the Department of Ethnology has been renamed and changed, separated from history to make like a Department of Anthropology as a single and independent department of anthropology under the College of Social Sciences and Humanity. And from the 2000s, we started in these two departments of anthropology. We started to offer programs in anthropology from BA to MA and PhD levels. For my department, for example, now every year we have we get like between around 70 BA students for our program, and a number of MA and PhD students. So the total number of students in my department is between like around, because the number changed around like 250 students, and also now we have written new textbooks, introduction to anthropology. And a number of years ago, the Vietnamese Association of Ethnology also has been transformed to Vietnamese Association of Ethnology and Anthropology. And today we also see new research interests on the one hand, a number of anthropologists and ethnologists still like a focus on the traditional topics and stick with ethnic groups approach, but we also see new engagement with contemporary transformation of culture, society, economy, environmental issues, and especially development in Vietnam and a little bit beyond Vietnam. For example, you see like this one, urban development becomes like one of the very new interest for a number of anthropologists. When a large area of agricultural land in Vietnam has been appropriated for urban development like this, and it like involve huge change and also conflicts and protests as well. So that became a new topic for anthropological research. And also like industrial development is in many provinces outside the urban areas of Vietnam. For example, the areas of residence villages. So people here and they farm here, and now we see new industrial zones here, and the transformation in this area become like good interest of research for many anthropologists. And if you look at like the map of industrial development in Vietnam from 1915 to 2020, for example. So the map show like quite many industrial zones has been built in throughout the country in Vietnam in the context of đổi mới. So urban development and industrial development created so much new research interest for anthropologists in contemporary Vietnam. And we also see like today anthropologists in Vietnam, on the one hand, they still like engage with policy making and implementation. That is apply anthropology in order to support the government on the one hand, but on the other hand, I think economic purpose is also very important. So we see in the context of contemporary society, we see a balance between economic and applied anthropology in Vietnam with critical use of ethnography, and quite like a flexible interaction with different traditions of anthropology and beyond anthropology. So anthropology, like social anthropology, cultural anthropology, and ethnology in Germany, for example, in France, for example. So it's like a not very well differentiated in the context of contemporary Vietnam. So I think also we see like increasingly engaging with diverse theoretical authentications, and a number of ethnologists, they committed to contribute original research to the world anthropology. So this one is, I think, a small number of anthropologists, especially those who got training overseas and then come back to Vietnam. They can speak, they can use English, they can engage with international community of anthropology, and they, I think, engage with this one. But on the other hand, we also still see like quite a good number of ethnologists that engage with state policy and ethnicity as a topic of research. So thank you very much for listening. That is the outline of anthropology in Vietnam. I would like to tell you, and if you have any questions that I could be able to answer, then I am happy to answer the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this enlightening lecture regarding the history and development of anthropology in Vietnam. But before taking question, I have received one question in your chat box. You can see also. Before taking the question, I would like to request Professor Unita Wintaro ma'am to say something, because she has been observing all the lectures from the very beginning. Ma'am, if you want to say something.
Maybe Dr. Sashmita, you said you have one question. I think please go on first, yeah, with the question. I will follow it later. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, no issue. So one question we have received in the chat box. Papino Kikru was the work of French administrator, anthropologist, used in ethnic classification? If not, why not acceptable? Could you follow the question, sir?
Can you say again? That I am about something about ethnic classification.
Yeah, I don't know who is he or she. She was asking the work of French administrator anthropologist who used. Was the anthropologist administrator involved in ethnic classification?
Can you say again? And I'm sorry.
Sir, you can see in the message box also, was the work of French administrator anthropologist used in ethnic classification? If not, why not accept?
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think because as I said, because the government recognized the list of 54 ethnic groups with recognized names. And then if we use different names, then it was not possible for like contributing to the state policy, or it was not very well accepted. Yeah, and I could see that in some way they have to use what the government has approved. So within that context of the second 20th century.
Okay, I hope you have received your answer, Kekru. Now, may I request Professor Jin Jung to say something? If ma'am, you are here.
Yeah, can you please speak a little bit slowly so I can follow you?
Okay, sure. I am asking Professor Jin Jung to say something.
Yes. Professor Su, yes. 1 minute, please. Professor Su, can you stop your sharing?
Yeah. Yes,
sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really learned a lot about Vietnamese anthropology. This is not really a question about Vietnamese anthropology, but I was listening to your talk.
We can't hear.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Hiba Tamak, I think it is your problem in your device. Professor Zung, you can continue.
Okay. So when I was listening to your talk, I came to think about North Korea, in fact, because before 1975, Vietnam was divided between North and South, and then those.
Hello, we can't hear.
I think, Hiba, I think it is your problem in your device. So it is not. We are all are listening, Professor Zoom. So kindly bear with us. Thank you.
Shall I go on?
Okay.
Yes.
You can
Okay.
continue. You can continue.
So North Northern Vietnam was called Viet Cong. So Vietnam then ethnology was being influenced by Soviet model of ethnology. So there were a lot of it sounded like there were lots of intellectual exchange between Vietnam and the Soviet Union. Then in North Korea, I don't think there has been any real intellectual exchange between Soviet Union or any other countries and North Korea as far as anthropology, what ethnology is concerned. And so I was wondering if it could be ever possible for any Vietnamese intellectuals or institutions to have any intellectual exchange with somebody or some institution in North Korea about ethnology or anthropological knowledge production. Yeah, that's just my comment, and some thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for a very interesting question. Yeah, actually, I haven't seen any evidence for this kind of interaction between the two countries. So, like in the another talk, I just examine the interaction between Vietnam and South Korea and North Korea today. So actually, they before North Vietnam and South Vietnam was similar to North Korea and South Korea. But today, the relationship between North Korea and Vietnam look like something very symbolic. But the relationship between South Korea and Vietnam has been like a strategic partner. So we actually don't see the interaction in ethnological research or teaching in any way between North Korea and Vietnam.
Can I ask question, Dr.
Yes.
Sushmita?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
Thank you, Professor Nguyen, for your interesting story about the development of anthropology in Vietnam. I was wondering because Vietnam was divided into North and South, with the influence of America more on the South. So in the first and second half of the century that you mentioned, about the influence of France and Russia, is it for the whole Vietnam or only for the North? And how about in the South? Is there no influence at all from the American anthropologists, for example? That's my question one. And I was wondering why you said that the theories were not quite developed during the influence of the development of ethnology. Is there no what you call it, theoretical contribution from the French or ethnologists, for example, French with the Lévi-Strauss, etc. Very strong anthropological anthropologists, etc. Why is that the focus is only on ethnology? In my understanding, it's more descriptive. Is that right? And then my other question is that can you give examples of how the collaboration between anthropologists and government, what kind of state's policy? Because as far as I know that I'm sorry, I do not know now, but the communism is so strongly influenced the state's governance at that time. And then about the Doimoy, etc. Is there any, just give an example of how the relationship was going on. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I think you have 3 points very
Yes.
interesting. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, for the first one, maybe it take me a long time to explain. But I think the main point is I don't know, somehow between 1964 and 1975, when Vietnam was divided into North and South. In the South, we still see like ethnology there, with a number of people who got training from France, and some people they got training from North America. But I think the practice of anthropological research or ethnology was not very strong. There was only a few number of persons, ethnologists, and there was no department of ethnology or anthropology there in the South under the periods of Vietnam War. There was no association of ethnology or anthropology there. But there were a number of ethnologists. They continue to do research in their own way, which depends on their traditional training. But they taught a number of courses. So I think the scale of ethnology in the south of Vietnam by that time was very, very small. And this was very different from the north. So from the north, it was like a boom when both the government and former Soviet Union worked together in order to promote ethnology. And then when they have a good number of ethnologists, and they ask them to work for the government in different way. And I think this, I get back to the question 3. This because in Vietnam, for the periods from 1954 in the north and after 1975 until very, very recently, anthropologists or ethnologists working in the universities or in research institutes often consider they are the government staff. So they got the salary employed by the government, and they got salaries from the government, and then they have to work for the government when the government requested them. And in Vietnam, I have to say, the most source of funding came from the government, and it's involved in the policy making and implementation, especially with the Center for Ethnic Affairs. That is almost like a ministry in the government. So it covers and in charge of all the issues about ethnicity, policy, implementation of the policy on this one. So this is a very, the model of the former Soviet Union. So there is one institution of the government in charge of this one, but they have a small number of staff. So they often got ethnologists from the institutes of ethnology and in my departments and other departments to work for them. So this kind of collaboration, they go like in 2 forms. On the one form is very official. So they have something they assign the department or the individual anthropologist to carry out a research project or something. That is a official channel. But the other one is, I think, more personal collaboration. So some people, they got a good expertise, and then they work with some officials in the government sectors. So they like can exchange. So that is what I think why they often link together very well. And one of the example today, for example, like the SIMA, that is today name of the Center for Ethnic Affairs in Vietnam. That is a almost like a ministry in the government. They cover all the things. And the last 5 years, it organized like a series of research projects on ethnic groups in Vietnam, and like they implemented around 50 research projects at the national level. So each project is more than 100,000 US dollar. So those, I think, a huge amount of funding for ethnological research. So I think quite a good number of ethnologists in Vietnam, they involved with this kind of doing research for the government. So in order to understand more about ethnicities and ethnic issues and other things in the area of the ethnic reasons in Vietnam for policy making, and also for the future development of social and economy in this area. Yeah, so that is, I think, the second question. The question, the point 2, that is about theories limited in the second half of 20th century. It was, I think, a good point, and we talk a lot about this one as the problem that we need to reform in order to get anthropological research move forward. For the, I think, some decades before, it was like not very open for researchers in general and for ethnologists in particular to talk about the theories outside the socialist circle. So what was about Marxism, about Leninism, that was what we should talk and we should use for research. And new theories was named like capitalist theories. So it was not welcome, and for a certain period of time, it was like almost no mention about those things. What you said in like structuralism was very popular. It was employed in research on Vietnam, but by the French ethnologists. So that's some of the Vietnamese ethnologists used that, but before 1954, but not exactly in 1954, but later. But some people they use that without making publicly that they use structuralism in their research. So it's a way, I think, a context. Ethnologists, they try to hide their theoretical innovation, and they dig in ethnography in order to be able to do ethnological research. and I think they have to engage with the government and the policy for their. So that was good because, as I said, the government provided the foundation for the making of the discipline. Then, but on the other hand, it limited the development and the practice of ethnology within what was approved. So that was the period of the second 20th century. So thank you.
Thank you. Can I just follow one more question following this?
Yeah.
Dr. Susmita? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Nguyen. I wondered when you said that the government finance all the research, yeah? And so, and the theories are not quite developed, I mean, freely, yeah, by the ethnologists. I don't know now with the anthropologists. So does it mean that the government define the direction or the outcome of the research, and to what extent actually the anthropologists or the ethnologists have a freedom in, for example, maybe critical thinking, critical views of the state's policy? Is there no such kind of that situation? Because in Indonesia, we experienced during our old regime, Suharto, that he banned any Marxism, what do you call it, lecturing and reading and discussion in the universities. But we just kept going on with, if as part of the theories, why not like that? So and even though I'm also a government civil servant, but we are free and we can criticize also, for example, the state's policy. So the applied anthropology in Indonesia now moving towards public anthropology, for example, yeah? Criticizing or questioning the hegemonic paradigm, yeah, by those in power. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I didn't say that the government define everything, but what I mean is that it was the context of the country. The context of the country by that time, if you remember that the Cold War. The Cold War and the division between the two systems, socialist and capitalist. And also in Vietnam, the division between North and South. So those contexts was very strong influence to make the research practice in ethnology in Vietnam. So if ethnology was part of the government, because for many reasons, so I think one of the good jobs and big job for ethnologists was to do what is to contribute to the nation state making and building. And theories, yes, we still like see theories in the research done by ethnologists in Vietnam during this period of time. But what I mean is that it's not like for all as we see what we do today, right? Because it was limited within the circle of the socialist countries, and also the like open dialogue about different school of thoughts in ethnology by that time was not strong. So I think on a certain level, we can see if we can compare what we do today. So the second part of 20th century, the research done by ethnologists in Vietnam, they stick more to the government and to support the building of the nation, implementation of state policies. That is on the one hand. But on the other hand, yes, also they still produce academic publication and teaching as well. So I think we still see that, but it's not like what we do today. So I think yes, we still see theories in anthropological, in ethnological research within this period of time, but not very strong and not very diverse, and that is what I mean. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, ma'am, I will just add to it. Ma'am asked a very pertinent point that whether even if the anthropologists are involved in policy making, how much they can speak of their own. So it is interesting that in Vietnam, anthropologists and ethnologists are involved in policy making policy making issues. This is interesting. Hashimon, yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. We have just crossed 1 hour 13 minutes. So if there is no questions yet, then I would like to put some of the comments on the deliberation of Professor Su. Is there any other questions from the audience?
I think you can continue.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Su, for giving some excellent lectures and very in a very smooth way. No, so we enjoyed a lot, learned a lot what happened in Vietnam. Now, some of the things highlighted in your talk that ethnology and ethnography. So these two things are very much attached to the anthropology of Vietnam. Now, in that particular context, I would like to highlight a very interesting observation when we are trying to compare between the Vietnam and China. So in our previous lecture, Professor Gang Chang from China, so he said that governments are trying to change the anthropology department into the ethnology, right? Now in Vietnam, now we said that you are trying to change the department from ethnology to anthropology. So there is a huge differences of the anthropological understandings between the countries, and that is our motto for doing such kind of international lecture program, where in a similar political background, similar economic frames, the thinking of the people are the different. So in Asian country, even in Asian country, this observation I just mentioned. So another thing is, we said that self-recognition, one of the important criteria for the ethnic group identification. Now, is there any linkages between the self-recognition and community sanction? Because you know that UN Declaration of the Indigenous Populations, there is a two term, that is the self-recognition and simultaneously the recognition of the community members. So that is my question. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you. I think the first point is quite interesting actually, and I try to point it out that I try to point out that for like in the 1950s, the government wanted to have ethnology because they sent out quite a good number of students to former Soviet Union and other countries to study ethnology, and also requested Soviet Union to send experts to Vietnam to assist the building of ethnology as a discipline in in Vietnam, because I think the importance of the question of ethnicity in the nation building of the Vietnam government at that period of time and until today. So that is one point. But then, as you say, that in the process of reform, quite a good number of ethnologists, they themselves initiated this reform, and the government no intervenes in this one. So today, I think, and also in this period of transformation, the discussion among anthropological research and among community of anthropologists in Vietnam is quite open, and therefore that's why they could engage with different traditions of anthropology around the world and engage with different theoretical orientations. And I think they are quite free, and this is, I think, one of the most differences between these two periods. The former periods, it was quite limited within the circle, but then this period of time, the contemporary time, then is like more open. But we still see one thing similar, that is the relationship between anthropology and policy making of the government is quite strong. It's one of, I think, the good point for anthropology, but not too much. If too much and only engage with policy making, it could create problem for innovation and diversity in anthropological research. And the second point is, I think there's actually quite a lot of discussion in Vietnam, both in the government sector and among anthropologists until today, because the classification of ethnic groups done before 1979 and ended in 1979, and then it became the official recognition of the government until today. So it quite like many times and many examples, people and community and even individual ethnic groups and also the local authority, they recognize tensions and problems over these issues, and the government have also discussed and wanted to have a look at this again, but it's very difficult because it has been used for national policy making in many sectors. For example, in management of the population, for example, in the ID card of a person, there is one line that you need to fill in the ethnic group that you belong. So it has been done thus in 1979, and until today, if you change, then you have to change the whole things. Well, it is very difficult. But I think discussion among communities and between and among ethnic groups and in the locals and also in the communities of anthropologists, is quite like a very important topic. And the government, as I said, tried to do a couple of times. This year, they set up a new team of people to prepare the proposal. for research and reclassify ethnic groups of a number of groups. And they did that in 2002, 2001, and it lasted until 2008. And then in 2013, they did that again. But after that, no change. After twice. And now I saw the proposal that's this year, but I don't know how this could go further.
Thank you, Professor Su, for your fruitful discussion, and hope that this discussion is going on in our future meeting. Also, you said that this is the starting between talking between us, because we are hoping to collaborate with others in the future time, in the coming time. So with this particular note, I hand over the platform to Sushmita for finish the program.
Thank you, Dr. Chakraborty, and obviously Dr. Shu. Now I would like to request Ms. Gopi Riba to deliver vote of thanks on behalf of the collaborators.
Thank you, ma'am. A very good afternoon to you all. I'm here to present the vote of thanks for today's lecture. I would like to extend a special thanks to our guest speaker, Professor Nguyen Xuan Su, for taking out time to enlighten us with his knowledge. Today's lecture was very informative. Thank you very much, sir. I would also like to thank to our organizing committee for their support, and our heartfelt thanks to all the participants for their active participations. And thank you all for making this event successful with your contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you all for attending the lecture, and I hope to see you again, maybe sometime in Hanoi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah, you from ANU graduates, Australian National University.
Yes, I studied there.
Okay, I was
2004.
I was graduated in 1997.